let me go back to the big game. And I do these rankings every week. I do some formulas and math where I use some of the DVOA data, and that KC Washington game really stands out. Like I feel like 55 may even be a low total because you have the number one offense in KC DVOA against the 28th ranked Washington defense, right? And then you have Washington's offense, which just comes in at 13th. Most people probably don't realize that they've been, pretty good, above average offensively, and KC's dead last, right? 32nd. So you have two mismatches on both sides of the ball, or both teams at least have a mismatch against the opposing defense. And that one sets up really well to be high. I just don't know how you get away from that game.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if you're playing that game, are you going, Mahomes Hill, Mahomes Kelsey? Are you trying to go? How would you approach that game?
So I think we've seen with Kansas City that even when they try to establish the run, that they get away from it so quickly. And with Edwards-Helaire out, and Washington being better against the run than the pass, their secondary has been their weak spot. That Kansas City's probably just going to air it out and go for it. Or even if they don't want to air it out, if they, Washington is hanging with them and scoring with them, or even goes up on them, now they're forced into. I just feel like you want to attack the passing game. I know Darrell Williams, we're going to probably talk about him later, will be popular for value, but I would much rather attack, and it won't be cheap. I know it's going to be hard to fit Mahomes in with some of those guys, but it's an elite spot.
Yeah, I think I think it's like I think I've been thinking about this game, and I think I'd go. I kind of want to go away from Tyreek Hill. Looking at the game logs, I noticed that every time Tyreek Hill has one of his boom games, which he's done twice this year so far, he's so isolated in that production that you don't usually see Tyreek Hill have a big game, plus Kelsey have a big game, plus the other receivers have a big game. There are games where Hill gets 15 targets, 12 targets, and he becomes that entire passing game. So I think if you're worried about cost, you could go Mahomes and stack him with Tyreek Hill, bring it back with McLaurin, and kind of just end it there.
Yeah.
I think you could go Mahomes, stack him with Kelsey, and Mecole Hardman, who, I think everybody was worried about like Josh Gordon being there. But Hardman got 12 targets last game. And I know that they were trailing the whole game, but you could go Mahomes, Hardman, Kelsey, which gives you more exposure to Kansas City without having to spend as much money or spend so much money, and then bring it back with McLaurin as well.
Yeah, I agree. I actually did a little study on this in the offseason where I ran all the numbers and the correlations, and Hill Kelsey really rarely ever correlate. It's always Mahomes with Hill or Mahomes with Kelsey. You never want to run all three together. It's very rare that they'll all pop off together. It has to be a really super high scoring environment for that. And I agree. I like Hardman a lot. I think Hill's going to play, right? He did get banged up, but he's probably going to play.
Yeah.
But I mean, for cheap, you can get Hardman. And we've seen him be involved in some of those gimmick plays and wide receiver sweeps and things too, just like they use Hill. He's having a nice year. I don't mind that at all. Getting away from that game.
Hold on, I want to just one thing with that game. If you want to be different, and still have access to that game, I kind of like stacking Heineke and McLaurin, and then bringing it back with Hill or Kelsey. Heineke had a really tough matchup against the Saints last week, but in the 3 starts he had before that, when he came in relief for the Giants, he had 24 DraftKings points against the Giants, 23.5 against Buffalo, 28 against the Falcons.
Yep.
So you can still get decent production at way less price than Mahomes. And obviously he's not Mahomes, but you're using that savings elsewhere. And you go Heineke, McLaurin, bring it back with Kelsey or Hill, or Kelsey and Hardman if you want to do that. And then I think you have access to that game and you're a little different.
Yeah, Heineke is going to be on my sheet this week for sure. And I even think he's probably going to be cash viable if you're going to pay down a quarterback. The other guy we didn't even mention was Antonio Gibson, who I thought was going to be real limited by. They said he had an injury that he's playing through, but he had a solid week last week, and we know Kansas City can get gashed on the ground. So you could even throw Gibson into the mix there. If you want to go really, deep down there, you can go Ricky Seals-Jones at tight end, filling in for Logan Thomas. And so there's a number of things you can do with Washington. Let's not beat that game to death right now. One game we didn't mention, let's throw it out there, is Cincinnati-Detroit. You have any interest in that one? Because I do.
Yeah, I really do, actually. The Lions defense has been improving in terms of their pressure. They're getting after the quarterback a little bit. But I really like the Cincinnati passing attack. And it's pretty, consolidated between their three targets. But you're starting to see that Jamar Chase is separating a little bit from the rest of those guys. And he's still under 7,000 on DraftKings, 6,700, which I think is a really good price to do kind of like a Burrow Chase and then bring it back with DeAndre Swift,
yes,
who we know is super involved in the passing game. He's among the league leaders. I think he actually might lead the league in high value touches.
Quality touches. Yep.
Yeah. So he's a guy who everybody's like, oh, you don't want a running back on a team that's trailing. Well, you do when that running back is getting 6 or 7 receptions every week as well, plus rushes inside the red zone. So I think something like, Burrow and Chase and bringing it back with Swift is a little small stack that I really like this week.
Nice. I almost skipped over but you mentioned it earlier, the Arizona-Cleveland game. I remember last week saying with you, hey, Cleveland Chargers might be low scoring. I had some of their defenses and then it went nuclear. I really like this game a lot. Like you said, Cleveland's defense was looking good up until last week, and they just got shredded through the pass game. And I'm suspect about Arizona. They just haven't had a matchup yet. And this matchup they're getting this week is going to be tough because Cleveland runs the ball as well as anybody. I have that as my third ranked matchup of the week on offensive versus defensive lines. That's where the Arizona to me is susceptible, is in the run game, and just they haven't played any good rushing attacks yet, or really that great. I guess they did beat the Rams, and they had that Rams game, but like they really haven't had a chance to be tested by a really good run game. So, it's a situation where you could play Chubb or Hunt and bring it back, or go Kyler with Nuke and bring it back with Chubb, one of those guys. I really do think that is another game we should be considering attacking.
Yeah, I really like that game as well. I mean, you mentioned it. The Cardinals are 31st in the league in yards allowed per carry at 5.4.
Yep.
And I really think that, I still stand by. I think the Chargers are a very good defense, but the only team worse than the Cardinals in allowing yards per carry is the Chargers.
Yep.
And that's what the Browns want to do. They want to pound the ball on the ground. It's a terrible matchup for the Chargers, which, we're wrong on that last week. That's fine. I think that this winds up being maybe a terrible matchup for the Cardinals, because I think you're going to see the Browns pound the ball on the ground, and then the Cardinals take to the air and expose the Browns secondary. So I think this could play out very similar to the game that we saw last week. And I think if you stack Kyler with DeAndre Hopkins, who's, still priced below Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson and Mike Williams. And we mentioned that, Hopkins was going to get right a little bit. And last week he had 9 targets, 6 catches, 87 yards, a touchdown. I think that, you could stack Kyler Murray and Hopkins and bring it back with Chubb. I think if you wanted to not make that a skinny stack, Rondale Moore saw his snaps go up, his routes go up at the expense of Christian Kirk. He saw 6 targets last week. He even got 3 rushes for 38 yards. So there's scheming ways to get him involved. He's only 4,600. So you could do something like Kyler, DeAndre Hopkins, Rondale Moore, and then run it back with Chubb. I would not buy into the Browns passing game yet.
No.
I know, in weeks past, we were like, Odell, maybe Baker hates Odell. Who knows? I'm just not. I'm really only playing Chubb or Hunt if you think that the Browns are going to be down a lot and have to pass as well. Those would be the only 2 options for me. I'm also not buying the David Njoku huge game from last week. I'm not going to go back to that.
No, I agree.